Citizen science discovers pawpaw pollinators in Michigan. Assembled by Connie Barlow in 2023 from video and photo documentation in southern Michigan. I'm Connie Barlow. Beginning in autumn 2020, when I tasted my first pawpaw here in southern Michigan, I began searching for academic and other resources online to help me understand the ecology of this northernmost species of the tropical fruit family, Ananaceae. I was surprised to learn that while scientists had documented long lists of insects visiting the flower, it seemed that no one had made the effort to distinguish effective pollinators from mere visitors. What I could learn online, I compiled into an immense web page, rich in images and referencing the technical papers. This video, assembled from fieldwork in the spring of 2021 and 2022, documents what I've learned thus far. Two years later, after 2 spring seasons looking for pollinators, I'm finally assembling a video to show tentative results. That is, the most likely candidates for effective pollinators. Insects capable of gathering pollen from the male stage of the pawpaw flower and delivering it to the female tip of the central inner flower stalk, the receptacle. Certainly the insect species capable of pollination are far fewer than the large number of visiting insects or spiders who build permanent homes inside the flowers. The downward hanging blossoms are very attractive places to just hang out and to keep out of the wind and rain. With the help of my neighbor Dallas Ford and his excellent camera work, I'm pretty sure we've documented that the most numerous 2 insect types hiding out deep inside the flower are very likely effective pollinators, with whom this flower type may have co-evolved. They are 2 species of beetles, and very small. Commonly known as sap beetles within the insect family Nitidulidae. Sap beetles are attracted to fruity smells, such as the yeasty smell of pawpaw flowers. The rest of this video will show, in order by date, field work done at Draper-Houston Meadows Preserve on May 2nd and 16th, Marc Boone's Pawpaw Orchard on May 7th and 16th, and Ypsilanti, home of our neighbor Monica King, just a few doors down from where I live, May 17th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. And that's all 2021. And then in 2022, I'll just do one more visit, just walk down the block to Monica's home again on May 14th. And again, this is for the peak flower time, recording who the pollinators are. We'll get started first, and we'll do it all in order of date. So May 2nd, 2021, we'll start field work at Draper-Houston Preserve. May 2nd, 2021, I'm Connie Barlow, and I'm out here on a reconnaissance to see what stage this wild pawpaw patch in Draper-Houston Meadows Preserve along the Saline River, what stage the flowers are in. Each of these flowers goes through first a female stage and then a male stage, but the pollinators can only do their work once some of the flowers are old enough to be in the male stage, and I've seen none in the male stage. Some may have a receptive female stage at this moment, but I'm not sure. What I have noticed here that is really terrific is that even on the same trunk, the same stem, you'll have flowers in various stages of development. Here's a little tiny one right here. Various stages of development, and so receptivity and While walking here, I happened to notice dark purple, a few on the ground. I happened to see a total of 4. I filmed one where some of these pawpaws had put out some blooms too soon, and they got crisped by the frost that we had just a couple weeks ago. Now, what I'd like to stress in Michigan, this is the northernmost part of the range of pawpaw, Asimina triloba, which extends far to the south down into Alabama. But the problem here is not that we have late frosts. We've always had late frosts. The problem this year is that we had too early of a long and very warm period. It was either late March or early April. And when you have that, it just tricks some of the trees. Now here, we have so many developmental stages. We're doing fine here. But anyway, the rest of this video, I'm going to show you what we've done so far. Michael Dowd, my husband, helping me with this. Hiking what we'd already seen last fall, knowing where the pawpaws were, and just getting an assessment of, yeah, there are a heck of a lot of flowers here. And up high, you get more, but sometimes, like here, see this leaning structure? This is what pawpaws often do, is lean. Like this, you can get some really low. So this would be a superb place when the male stage finally comes through in some places to actually stay here and observe who, if anyone, is visiting the pawpaw flowers. The male flowers to pick up pollen on their belly, and then the female stage to land on the tip of the central receptacle coming down, land upside down on the tip, and spread the pollen onto the female part. It's about noon, it's close to 80 degrees, and we are out at the north end of Draper-Houston Pawpaw Patch. And yes, the flowers are starting to come out. We need to be observing both male and female stages to see who the effective pollen gatherers and pollen planters on the female receptive part are. So here's a sense of when they come out. If we take a look down, well, over here, and then down here on the ground, I'm thinking that this here, I don't know if this is ramps or not, but here you can see some of the flowers. I know that's a garlic mustard right there in the center. We also have quite a few violets out here. Here's what's going on with the trees. Let's see, who's that over there? Oh, some kind of an oak, I think. So that's some kind of an oak. So you can see what the overstory is here. You can see that a lot of sun getting in right now during the time when the flowers are going to be coming out. This shows the different sizes of the openings going on and a little bit of the tip of the leaf coming out. Here's a number of stems coming out. This one closest on the left, the biggest, already died. The one behind it, crusty looking, but that one is still alive. You might be able to see some of the pawpaw flowers on it. And what's helpful for being able to do observations is that even this small one right here, there you can see the ones on the left, even this small one right here has quite a few flowers on it, including right here. So this is the kind of place to stand observation once they become receptive. One little flower bud, and I'm showing this because there's a lot of leaves coming out on the tips of this, but look how tiny this one is, and yet putting out one flower. Terminal leaves are coming out on these little ones, so they're helping to photosynthesize faster, while the ones with flowers have to put all their energy not into new leaves but into getting the flowers fully developed. Here's Marc Boone's Pawpaw orchard. This is what it looked like. The previous September 2020, the pawpaw trees are subcanopies, so they stay small. They're yellow there, deciduous in the front row. Behind that are some conifers and also a sugar maple on his property. Now here's what the fruit looked like. It's a U-pick orchard, and quite a few people were there that beautiful weekend in September. Now we're going to May 7th, 2021, and look at how barren these trees are. Quite a few rows that he has, and now he's going to take us on a tour.
There's about 300 trees here. Some of them are grafted, a lot of them are seedlings. This was a seedling that I grafted with a branch that I got on the Huron River. I just call it Huron. There were certainly other varieties on the Huron River because they had fruit, so there had to have been different gene types. But the branch that I took was off a tree that I liked the fruit on.
Wow, look at this beautiful, both sides all the way down. Yep. Are pawpaw back in the 80s, and look at all the flowers. You have got a lot of flowers here.
If we don't get a bad frost, I think I'll have a lot of fruit.
Yeah. Dallas just took some pictures after dumping this. There's a jumping bug. Well, I'll paste in a photograph of it, but a little black jumping thing that he dumped out of by knocking, it didn't take the flower up, it just turned it upside down and knocked. And a lot of pollen came out with it. So it was in a male stage flower, whereas the previous picture came out of a female stage flower that I had found. I think, it's this one. I'm pretty sure that it's this one here. And I've noticed the anthers are getting ready to come out, but there's still a glistening tip on the female part there. So, and the sun, it's just really starting to warm up, and the sun's out. So we'll look for a few more insects here and see what we can find. Same tree, receptive female stage. Boy, the sun's coming out. Dallas took a close-up on the bottom of here, the biggest bug we've seen thus far. Dallas has got better eyes than me, and he always spotted everything first. Give us your assessment of whether you think you saw... Now we both saw mostly spiders, but they're not pollinators. They just stay in one flower. What's your assessment of whether you saw a pollinator and what you think it was?
I would say we saw pollinators. There is more than one type of beetle that we saw. from this pawpaw with the stump to the edge. Connie saw 20 green buds, 30 female buds, and 50 male buds. And I saw 20 green, 50 female, 30 male.
And those are all percentages.
Yes.
So we're pretty much the same on the greens. That's going to have a while to open, or at least get really receptive. And then we're the exact opposite of male-female. Is that 30-50 and 50-30. Mm-hmm. So now it was drizzling all day. Oh, look we've got some sun coming out. What I've read about the pollinators, the beetles in particular, is that they're very poor flyers, and so they don't fly in the wind. Well, it's not windy. So it's probably about noon now, maybe a little after. We've got some blue sky coming, but we're going to go off to Draper-Houston. We're just getting ready to leave to go to Draper-Houston, and the sun came out full. So I wanted to get a better look at the stage that the black walnut leaves are in. It could be an indicator for when we see the black walnut in this stage of leafing, that may be that the pawpaws are in sync with it. So here are the two walnuts, and looking up, here's their leaves. Dallas just captured several photos of a fly, regular size fly, might have had like a zebra printing on it, on the flower on the top, which the female part is not yet black, but it's not glistening either, and the males are just starting to come out. So we just found a second insect. Actually, I found it. It was a late stage, and so the petals just fell off around onto my hand, and the beetle was there. That tip there, the female is all black, so it's well past, and the petals fell off. And there you can see some of the remaining anthers, but they mostly fell off. And it was the same little tiny black shiny beetle, that one that was a jumping beetle that we saw at Marc Boone's place. And this one was just running all over my hand. And then eventually, when I provoked it, it did fly. This is a close-up of one of the flowers that I was just looking at and saw a mosquito that I thought might have been trapped on a web, and Dallas took a picture of it. And when I touched in that area, the mosquito flew off, so it was just hanging out there. But you can see it's very late stage. There's the anthers. I don't know if that's live pollen on it anymore. I expect so. But that's the female, and the female tip is black, but who knows whether it actually got pollinated. But at this stage, you touch that area and the petals just fall right off. All right, I was able to look into about 8 flowers this low, quite a few green ones here. Only 2 were male. The rest were female stage, so this too, at least low down, who knows what's up there. But this one too seems to be a little early on. All right, Dallas just took a picture of an insect on the outside of the petals?
Outside.
Okay. I was able to get a picture of it too. I've just taken a really good close-up. I touched the petals and it moved a little bit upright, but it's definitely some kind of a bug. not a beetle. And this tree, just like the other ones out in this area, small, young, has got all stages on it. Some still green, some beginning to open, some vibrant female, and some not only male but beyond the little male stage. Here's a little green one right here. And here's what it looks like coming out of the ground there. Somewhere down here, Dallas found, there it is, right by his camera, found what I've seen in Alabama called little brown jug. And it almost looks like a tiny pawpaw flower. It's got the 3 petals on it. I forget the genus name, but I've seen it in huge one in Humboldt County. The leaves are these round ones here. Yeah, let me get down on that. Okay, so they point downward. So here's the stage of the undergrowth here, and I can smell, oh yeah, right here, those yellowing, those would be the ramps. I picked a leaf and it smells onionish. So, but you can see here they're late stage. And the forest floor, given that very few of the trees have leafed out. The hawthorns certainly have. And then up there, that's got to be maple. Yep. Okay, so the maples are leafed out. But right where we are here, what do we have? Well, we're total pawpaw patch right here. Wow. This is interesting. When you get yourself a total pawpaw patch, you create your own sunlight. You create your own canopy break, because none of the other trees can get started beneath you. And I know we saw that's a willow over there, but yeah, this is, okay, look at this. They have created, these are old stems, they have created their own canopy patch. And so the only one over here, that's hackberry bark on there. So that's got that elm-like type leaf on it. That's hackberry bark. And let's see, the sun is directly over here. I would guess it's about between 1 and 2. So south would be this way. So there's just a lot of opportunity for sun here. But I'd never thought of that before. Created its own little sun patch. So this is another example, and all of these stems are pawpaw. These beautiful stems. All of these are pawpaw in here. May 17th, the day after we were at Draper-Houston, and it's very warm. I think it's going to get up to about 83 today. I'm in Ypsilanti, and this is in a neighbor friend's yard. Whoa, who's that on there now? It's a fly. This particular flower is early stage male, And I found between the inner petal and the outer petal, I found a beetle. And I got a video of it before it flew off. So here's a sense of where we are. We've got a big tree here. That's Depot Town, Ypsilanti. Here's the neighborhood. And this tree here is one of two in this yard that has flowers. I think this one has fewer male stage flowers than the other one. This one gets a bit more shade, I think. And the other one, gosh, it's hard to see. It's right up against that fence there, next to that tall cone of wire that you could tell is for like a tomato going up or something, but it's right to the left there. And there aren't that many flowers on there, but they're mostly all late stage male. All right, back to this one here. And here's a couple green ones in there. So here's one of the flowers, but you can see how big these leaves are relative to the leaves that were out at Draper. This is a late stage male, and there's a couple of large ants, I think copulating over there on the left. But there's a lot of yellow pollen grains on its head. Here's another view. And because this is such a late stage male, you can see late stage male there. The upper two petals were very easy for me to just lift upward, and they just pulled right off. And I wanted to do that because it was the first one I've seen that had holes in that part of the petal, which is where the corrugated area where there's supposed to be food. I don't know if it's in the outer petal or just the inner. May 19th in Monica's pawpaw patch. The very first pawpaw flower I looked at looked like it had some movement in it. So I put my bowl underneath it, shook out, and the tiniest little beetle that you can see here was in it. And it flew off. The second flower I went to, again, I saw some movement right in the anthers. Both of them are kind of mid-stage to late-stage male. And the second one had this same beetle in it. They easily drop off into the bowl when I put the bowl underneath the downward pointing flower, they drop right into it. And they really don't seem to want to fly. I'm going to see if I can put this back on a flower. Here in this pair, I held them over the bowl and then tapped. And another of the tiny, same little black beetles dropped out. That's a very late stage male on the left and a very early stage female on the right. So 3 out of the 4 attempts I've made thus far has had that same little black beetle dropping into the white bowl that I use. Very interesting. This is the 6th flower I've attempted to just tap, and black beetle fell out. Here it is. This is the white bowl, and I just always move a maple seed into it for scale. And so they seem pretty reluctant to fly. They'd rather just drop down onto the bowl and look around. Oh, the last one I tried to put back, I just kind of dumped onto the top of a flower, and looked like it stayed there. So, oh, this one's up, just flew. That was exciting. This beetle is 2 to 3 times the size of the little ones. And I was surprised anything came out. It was in a very early stage female. Wow. Let's see if it flies. Oh, there it goes. I think it was one of these three down here, maybe this far one. Yeah, that's an early stage. It's an early stage female there. This is the first beetle I've had come out of a female rather than a male. And it's different. It was bigger. 2 flowers later, again, a male with pollen. This one, when I tapped, dropped out of it. This was an absolutely perfect female, and when I put it upside down and tapped it, I was really surprised. 3 ants fell out of it. Normally the ants don't fall at all, but these did. But it was a perfect female waiting to be pollinated, and these ants were in it, 3 of them. All right, I'll put you guys back. Yeah, you're finding friends. Okay, I'll put you back there. Wow, you're so happy to see one another. Yeah. Okay, right on the tip of this maple seed, that's a black beetle, same tiny kind, and this one dumped out of a pair right next to each other, so I could kind of shake them over the same bowl together. And one was a perfect stage receptive female, and the other peak male, or at least it looked peak male to me. And, oh, this one's getting ready to fly. Nope. I just observed this pair, and that little green one, I did see one of those little black beetles in there, and there was an ant in there, and they seemed to be getting along. And here's the rest of the bush that I've been probing. You can see how big it is down there at the stem end. And the other one, as I turn around here, is, you can't see it behind the bush, but it's right along the fence there. It's shorter than this one and not as many flowers. May 20th, back over here at Maple Street, Ypsilanti. This is the older of the 2 pawpaws that I looked at yesterday. I took some pictures and found 2 kinds of beetles. I just counted the flowers on here, and 43 that are purple, about 15 that are green. They're harder to see. Some of the green are still pretty small. And I estimate about a half dozen, maybe more, have already lost the petals, that they're done. So it's about noon, early 70s, I think. It's going to get up to 88 today. Thankfully, we're shady in here, and the breeze is just starting up a little bit. This is the very first one I looked at today. It's low down, and there's no real pollen yet, but the anthers are starting to pull apart. You can see them distinctly. And there's 3 still green stigma tips, no blackening on them all at all, which suggests to me they might not have been pollinated. But when I looked at it, I turned it over and I looked at it first, I could see 2 small, very small insects, one on the petals and one kind of deeper in. And when I slightly tapped it over my bowl, both of them flew. They did not fall in the bowl, and I could see that they were both some sort of fly. So that's very different from what I saw yesterday. This has a wonderful, intense smell to it. The third flower, very low down that I looked at, had one of the larger of the two beetle types pretty much instantly fall out of it into my bowl. The smell wasn't as intense, and it looked peak male. That is, all the anthers were open and a lot of pollen there. The next flower, the fourth, low down, total of 3 of those large beetle types in that fourth flower I looked at. Just probably a little bit past peak male. The one on the right is the last one that I did. I think that was number 4. And the one I just did, the one on the left, is still got some pollen, but it's way post-peak male. And in fact, there was a little beetle that exited immediately and went on to the leaf. This was the little beetle kind, the first of the little beetle kind I've seen today, which was the dominant kind yesterday. Couldn't get a video of it at all. But then also, with just a slight tap, some of the purple petals were falling off that one. It was so far. Okay, the 6th one, when I looked in, it's way peak male. And I could see some black thing moving deep inside. So I knew something was there, but it took me a lot of shaking to get it out. And there was this one big beetle, and there's another small one in there. And this time I used the technique of putting it into a bottle cap under the big magnifying glass. Small one's probably at the edge. See it trying to fly? All right, I'm going to let you go. Just thank you. I was just getting ready to look at another one, and I saw an insect flying, and it landed on the green leaf to the right of this flower and then was kind of walking around on the edge. I don't know where it is now, but wait, what's that? It must be a wasp. That must be a wasp. Okay, so what I was wondering 2 days ago, my first time here, this is my 3rd time here, I reported 2 ants with a red thorax, kind of large, mating. And then I realized later in the day, ants don't mate. I mean, they have their queens and the males go off, and they're not the same size like that. So that was a wasp. And this was another wasp that landed and then left. This one right here. And I could tell it was still a female. The green stalks, it looked like 3, but not glistening anymore, but they weren't black either, so I don't know if that means they weren't pollinated. But the anther heads had separated, and I could see a few little dots of yellow pollen in there. Immediately when I turned over the flower to look, one of the large beetles just came right out and left. But then when I shook it over the bowl, one more large beetle and a small beetle came out. All right, this is the second one I've looked at on this left side. And when I turned it over to see what stage it was at, it's very late stage male. Still pollen, but some of the anthers easily fell right off. You know, the brown stems of them. And I noticed that one of the little black beetles was crawling along the stem beyond the flower. And then I shook it. Nothing came out, you know, over the bowl. But when I turned it over again, there was another little one, and it flew off. This really open one was, when I looked inside, it had the most really accessible, brilliant yellow pollen of any I've seen. Later smelled it. It has a good smell. Look at, there's off to the left. That one's already finished. But when I put the bowl under this one, a total of 4 of the big beetles fell out and 2 of the small beetles. And the big beetles pretty quickly took off and fly. Small beetles, they might still be in the bowl I put on the ground. Anyway, this was a really superb find here. This is the most, total of 6 beetles fell out of that one, and no other kind of insect. All right, I'm going to continue my quest. Thus far, I'm finding that before the green opens and turns red, there is absolutely no smell. The females seem really, really wonderfully yeasty smelly, I guess is what it'd be called. The males still have it, but I'm wondering now if whether the females have it the most, and a beetle lands there on the tip and then goes, oh, no pollen, I'll fly off, and spends more time in the pollen or the anthers. I don't know. We'll have to see. There's quite a few purple ones at this stage. This one has a green one next to it. And what I find in every single one that I test for smelling, there's no smell. And yet I was able to get this upwards and look with my magnifying lens. And the 3-parted stigma tip of the female looked like it might be glossy already, and yet there's no smell. So it's interesting to note. I just moved to the second one, the one that's maybe only 7 feet tall at most. This one gets more sun, and definitely the flowers are farther along. I counted 6 purple flowers that are still, very open, but 13 that are purple and past, or where the petals have actually fallen off, and I think just 1 little green one I saw. So this one definitely would have produced male pollen first, and therefore been available to be able to pollinate the first of the more shadier, taller plant, kind of in the middle of the picture there. But I'm going to take a look and see who's here and what stages that the flowers are in. I just looked at this flower. This is the first one I'm looking at. It's on the sunny side, the only one that's still available on the sunny side. And this is the first female I've smelled that has no smell. It has no smell whatsoever, and yet the glistening tips, I mean, I could see them glistening, but maybe just one, not all 4, but maybe just one. So I'm thinking it just put out, just right now probably the first. And before I leave here, I'm going to make a note of where that one is, and I'm going to see if it starts to smell before I leave, and then certainly smell it again tomorrow. But that's the first where I've been to a wide open female, gorgeous, glistening, and no smell at all. The one on the left, I had unknown, when the one right in the center with the big leaves that I was shaking, and I saw some ants on it again. But that one would have been shook too, so I looked in it, found it was another early stage, very early stage female with no scent. But the interior stigmas, there were 4 of them, looked like there was some glistening on them, but no smell. But the thing that was weird, there was one of the round tops of the stigma quite a bit off, leaning to the left. So I touched it with my finger, and glory be, it was the exact color of the stigmas, but a little spider that had its abdomen was the yellowish green, and the rest of it was brown. It was just waiting there. And there was also a spider web in there. So that was interesting. All right, enough for today. I'll be back here tomorrow with Dallas, where he can use his high-res camera and we can get some really good pictures. But today is even more abundant with beetles than yesterday. All right. right, May 21st we're here, and the very first flower is a flower pair we looked at. Dallas got a picture of this strange fly type thing, and I haven't seen it before, but it was in something that still has green stigma there, and it's very early male pollen. All right, this was a very late stage male, so when I knocked it over this cereal bowl, all these petals just fell off, and we saw a total, was it 3 or 4 of the big beetles, relatively big, and only one of the tiny ones. All right, we just did a third one, late stage male, and the petals didn't come off when we shook this, but the anther sure did. And Dallas is photographing here in the bowl. There were no small ones that came out, but 2 big ones. They seemed happy to just stay there, and when he showed me a picture that he already has, it looks like they've got pollen on their legs. So this is great. So we just did this one. It's a late stage female. You can start to see the yellow anthers. They're still round and no pollen, opening up a little. But it had 4 tips on the stigma. I couldn't see if it was glossy, but it smells yeasty. And what's interesting, just one little beetle fell out of it. None of the big ones, but one of the littlest beetles. Right in the center of the picture is, well, there's definitely pollen in there, but the 4 stigma tips still look green. None of the stigma tips have had that black or brown that we've seen even when they're in the male stage. So I don't know if that means they're not pollinated. But this one, when we looked inside, the color is very pale purple-brown, and absolutely nothing popped out of it. We just did these 2 here, and the one on the left is, it's got pollen, but it still had, but old female, but the petals are close together. No green tips at all on the stigmas. This one is the one that Dallas just got a gorgeous interior picture of when I turned it up right into the sun. And it is a really early female. There is no fetid smell at all yet. And the stigmas look gorgeous, and the yellow on the unopened anthers are beautiful. But when we knocked both of these over a bigger bowl, absolutely nothing came out. Nothing at all. All right, Dallas is taking pictures of the beetles that haven't flown yet. What was it? Two big beetles and no small ones?
One small one.
Oh, and one small one. Okay, and that came out of this flower right over here. And that flower is male. There's anthers. And Dallas, you said you think you saw pollen on the beetles.
Yeah, this beetle definitely has pollen on its feet.
It's one of the big ones?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a close look at the large beetle, Glischrochilus. Here you can see pollen all over on its back, but especially when you see it right up by its mouth, that may mean something, or not. Here's another photo of 2 of the large beetles, and here you can see one pollen grain only on the left beetle on its back. But let's take a close look at the beetle on the right. Look at where the arrow is pointing. That's a beige-colored mite, and I never saw that until I was editing this video and looking very carefully at the photographs. Now, as it turns out, I've seen mites on 2 other species of beetle in the family Nitidulidae, and this is carrion beetles and the dung beetles and the burying beetles. So let's take a look at the 2 different beetle species that I've seen that have mites. The first one, I'll just show you a photograph here, is on a large mushroom in Michigan. And those would be carrion beetles, normally eating decaying meat, but here fast going after a decaying mushroom. The second species of nitidulid beetle that I actually immortalized in a YouTube video is a type of burying beetle that I saw while in California. Here's an excerpt. It's like a shrew. I'm looking at
a shrew, right?
I'm looking at its mouth right now. Oh, that's actually a mole.
That's a good eye that you saw that.
Ooh, it's got some mites on it. The beetle has some parasites on it. Wow. The mites are symbiotic. The burying beetle gives them a free ride to a food source that will feed both sets of young. The young mites eat any fly eggs and larvae that were laid before the carcass is buried. This ensures that the beetle larvae will not in turn be eaten by the flies. Okay, we just shook this pair. This one over here is still closed, very early female. This one, when I looked into it, beautiful 3 fleshy stigma tips, looks receptive. And when we shook both of them over the bowl, just one tiny beetle dropped out. But what's very interesting is that for sure there's no pollen yet in this one because the stigmas did not get any pollen after we shook it. So we know that there's no self-pollen yet. And really yeasty smell, so this is a good stage for these. That one in the center, silhouetted in the sun, is like a mid-stage male. I shook it and none of the petals came off. Stigma's still visible, but it already had pollen from its own flower on it. And still had a lovely fetid yeasty smell, but not as much as a real vibrant female has. And there was just one little beetle that shook out of this, the smallest kind. So we just moved to the second tree here, and this is the one where this flower right here was just opening as a female yesterday, had a bit of glisten on it, but it didn't smell at all. And it does smell now, and when I shook it really violently, nothing dropped out of it, nothing at all. And obviously its anthers aren't dropping any pollen, but there were 4 very beautiful stigma tips on there. Look like they're ready and waiting for some pollen. All right, we'll look at a few more on here, but you can see it's in the sun right now, this tree here. And so it's definitely a very late stage. That was the only female. A lot of ones have already lost all their petals, but there's about 4 over here on this side that we'll take a look at. All right, we did a pair that was close together on the same branch. So I've got the big bowl here and shook them. Just one little of the smallest beetles came out. But what was interesting to me was that here are the 2 here, one underneath those leaves and then one over here. And the far one over there is an earlier stage male. And so there were no anthers falling into the bowl when this was shook. And this one is a later stage male, and a lot of anthers were falling in. I don't know which one the little beetle came out, but this one didn't have much of a smell. This one did. Again, it's an earlier stage male. All right, this is the last one we're going to do on this tree. It's a male. But I shook it, no beetles at all fell out, no petals fell, but when I looked in, a little tiny fly-like thing was in there, but we couldn't shake it out. So that's the last one we're doing. It's an early stage male. I think I see pollen on the female parts. I'll have to take a closer look at that. So what was useful about this experiment is it became really clear to me that the bigger of the two beetles can fly much better than the little one. So I put the everything is in the into the small bowl now that I have a top for. Uh-oh, here comes a thunderstorm. Anyway, I'm going to put the top on this. The beetle can hang out with the flowers all day, and then tomorrow I'll take it back to where I found it, the two pawpaw trees, just a half a block walk away at Monica's house. So this way I can carry it back so that it can find another flower. Okay, that's it. One more thing I'd like to mention here. November 2022, I was sorting seeds from the rotting fruit I had collected at Marc Boone's orchard after the U-pick harvest was well over. Some of the dark brown fruits still had tasty yellow pulp, but others were very definitely rotting, smelling like vinegar. I had no desire to eat any of that pulp. One day I was sorting seeds outdoors at the wooden table on the porch. Lo and behold, something moved. Several things moved. This was the same sap beetle type, Glischrochilus, that we had observed inside the flowers. Next, I looked carefully at the plastic edges and lids of the container, and I saw larvae. Online I found that yes, indeed, these are the larvae of the sap beetle, genus Glischrochilus. So these poor flyers, whether in a wild or horticultural pawpaw patch, operate with excellent reciprocity. First, while munching on the food-rich, thick and corrugated lower region of the inner petals, the beetles gather pollen on their way out. They then land on the glistening tip of the female organ in another flower, thereby depositing pollen on the sticky surface. Then they crawl down into the deep part of this second flower. Eat food, deliver pollen. Eat food, deliver pollen. That's reciprocity. In autumn, while these beetles do not seem to bother the ripening fruit, once the fruit does fall to the ground, they will, and their larvae will then exit the fruit, dig down, and pupate for the winter. Yes, indeed, citizen science reveals the pollinators of Pawpaw in Michigan and nature's forms of reciprocity.